Welcome to the Non-Essential Podcast. I'm Steve Gibson.
I'm Ben Matlock. That didn't even sound like my name. What the fuck? Why can't I enunciate? Yeah, I'm Ben. Hi. Fuck, dude.
That's okay. I
haven't had my game fuel yet today. That's
that's the problem.
Yeah, because I was saving it because we got another game fuel review.
You had to. I don't know how you lasted an extra week without.
I drank all the regular ones that we reviewed last time.
You poor bastard.
They still suck. That's the verdict after 3 of those.
Yeah, like we talked about, I think that was the regular Mountain Dew flavored game fuel, and that in my estimate, I've not had it, but I would guess it would just taste like flat Mountain Dew.
That's pretty much If you listened to the show last time, we took a week off because life happened. But the last review, it tasted like a flat Mountain Dew. It just generally sucked.
Yeah.
And now we got the Cherry Burst, the charged Cherry Burst.
I assume that's the red can.
Yes.
The red. Yeah.
And we'll see. I'm expecting probably like a flat Code Red. So let's find out.
I was listening.
I
was listening for the.
No, that's
I didn't hear it.
It's definitely not Code Red.
No, it's not.
That tastes. I want to describe it as Diet Kool-Aid.
Yeah, I mean that's what that one I've had a lot because that's one of the ones I use. Like I talked about, I use those when I'm mixing them, as mixers, and that's when it goes fantastic.
That was pretty much the verdict of last time. It was like, if you have booze, this will totally go in booze. Fine.
Right. Booze can fix a lot of things, though.
But it's not. It's not even really fixing it. It's just sort of like, hey, this is adding a flavor that's not just like straight liquor.
Yeah,
so,
see,
I don't know if
I think I would
fixing game fuel, but this isn't as bad as the original.
No. I would describe it as like if Mountain Dew was the company behind Hawaiian Punch. Like,
yeah, maybe.
It's kind of like this. I don't want to say soda version because then you picture carbonation and stuff, and it's not that. But it's.
I think there's something inherently wrong to me about something with a Mountain Dew label on it that's not carbonated. Like, I really don't like the idea of them getting into juice. Like, I feel like that's not their turf, and they should leave it be.
Yeah, and that's the thing when you're amping, because I think it's game fuel amp, right? When you're amping up the caffeine and the sugar level in your drink, that carbonation kind of helps cut it and keep it in balance. And they were like, yeah, fuck it.
Yeah.
That's an extra step.
Yeah. This is, like I said, this isn't terrible, but there's just... I don't know what the fuck this is. I don't know what the fuck they're doing with these. I don't really know.
Yeah, my assumption is by like not carbonating it makes them more like crushable. You can chug them, and it's like, yeah, but
you shouldn't. And
right,
they don't have that much caffeine. They're 90 milligrams of caffeine, which is like bitch shit, honestly. They don't like taste great. And it's not water, so it's definitely not healthy for you. I don't know.
I just happen to have one of these NOS Energy drink cans sitting here because I never clean my freaking computer desk. It's a mess.
Yeah.
And yeah, just for comparison, a NOS is like 100. And I can't tell if that's supposed to be it's really small. I think it's 160, so almost double a game fuel. So it's not like it's like energy drink level caffeine. It's just slightly more than Mountain Dew level caffeine.
Yeah, I like Monsters, like I've talked about them before. The Java ones are like 200 because they're, in supercharged fucked up coffee drinks.
Is that just a regular Java? Because they also have like a triple shot Java. I'm kind of afraid to try that one.
I already have a huge caffeine problem, and like like the regular Java ones, like give me fucking chest pains. But I keep drinking them.
Yeah.
And so that's like 200. Considering that like a recommended dose of caffeine is like not even a recommended, but like the absolute limit, we talked about it last time, is like 400. So it's like half of it in one can of this shit. And then
caffeine
like,
takes a while
not
to
enough.
Yeah. Let's crank it. Like, if you want your daily intake of caffeine in a single can, here you go.
But like regular monsters are like 140, I think. And some of the juice ones that I like are like 170.
See, and that's again the same deal. Like, I like them. In fact, I bought some last week because I was going through like, it was just one of those weeks I could not get any sleep and was just so fucking tired, and kind of had not really back and forth. That makes it sound like an argument, but a mini discussion on Twitter the other day about it. It's like the caffeine doesn't actually like give me energy, but I think that very uncomfortable, like jittery feeling at least keeps you awake. But like,
yeah,
in a terrible state, you're like a vibrating zombie, or at least that's what happens to me.
Yeah,
but
I mean, you don't like, especially our job, like you need caffeine to do it, but you're not alive when you take that caffeine. Like your brain's still not really working.
It's a shitty state to be in. It's just slightly less terrible than being like asleep on your feet. Like, because that's...
Well, I mean, it's also like the only socially acceptable substance abuse you're allowed at work, you know? Like,
that's true, too.
Like you know,
it's weird.
It's totally a drug problem.
They let you chug as much caffeine as you want, but you try to snort one little line just to get yourself through the day, and they fire you. I don't get it.
No matter how fucking productive I am, in between those constant trips to the bathroom to, you know, bump a rail off a toilet seat.
You peel the face off of one pain-in-the-ass customer, and they say, suddenly you have a drug problem.
You fucking bite somebody's forehead just once. Okay, so yeah, well, you know, I'm not going to give these stars, but I'll say the cherry is better than the regular. We got 2 more flavors for 2 more shows.
Today, I don't even know what the flavors are. They're just colors to me. There's the blue,
there's red,
the red.
Yeah, red's better
green.
than green, which is the only time I'll say that. And we got blue and yellow.
Okay. I know how I rank them, but I'll keep my mouth shut. I want to see how you...
Yeah. Anyway, this is the Non-Essential Podcast when we're not reviewing fucked up goddamn Mountain Dew juices. We tell each other stories, and this week it's my turn, and this week I actually got 2 stories here in the theme of exorcisms.
Ooh.
Because we've done a couple episodes, I think, with some exorcism stories. At least one. I know I did one way back in the day.
Yeah, I feel like I had one too.
Yeah.
But there's so long ago now, I can't remember if I had one or if it was yours and I'm just remembering it.
Yeah.
But I think I had one too.
Well, this was the fucked up one where I had to keep like searching our site to see if we had talked about either of these. And to be fair, I couldn't find it, but that doesn't mean we didn't. So you might stop me halfway through and be like, I talked about this.
No, the one that I was just thinking of for me wasn't an exorcism. It was one of those crazy, like, religious cultist things, but it didn't get to exorcism. They just...
Yeah.
Whatever. But...
All right.
Go ahead.
So, in 1906, a 16-year-old girl named Clara Germana Cele was a Christian student at the St. Michael's Mission in Natal, South Africa. I guess they just decided... I guess at some point she just decided to make a pact with the devil. Like, that's something I don't understand about a lot of exorcism stories. Like, there's never a clear motivation for why they would make a pact with the devil. and get possessed.
Most of the exorcism stories that I'm familiar, and to be fair, it's not like a topic that I'm like well read up on. I know about the movie that I've never watched, and there's a few things like we've covered here and that I've read throughout but all the ones I'm familiar with, it's not even they make a deal with the devil. It's like they just
something happens, yeah,
possessed,
right? But a lot of them I've noticed, like it's always their fault. Like the nuns and priests involved are like positive, like you fucked up and let the devil in. According to a nun, Clara rejected any blessed holy objects like crucifixes, and she was also now fluid in a variety of languages. Out of nowhere,
that just sounds convenient. Like
out of nowhere, I guess she understood Polish for German, French, Norwegian, and a few others.
Well, those are crappy languages. Learn like good ones.
Yeah, of course, Polish, the language of the beast. Historically,
Jorgen Borgen. I guess that's more.
That was Swedish.
Muppet, but
wasn't that the Swedish stuff?
Yeah.
She also had some clairvoyant ability to read the thoughts and discern the secrets of those around her, even if she never really met them. So I guess she just started snitching on all the transgressions of people who she had never really talked to. Which is like, what kind of world are you living in when like you're a piece of shit and some girl you've never met just starts telling people all of your dirt? You know, it's nothing sacred.
I'm already thinking what's actually going on is like she's just observant and she picked up dirt on people, and the best way to deflect it, it's like, oh, Sister Mary's having an affair with Brother Abbott or whatever, and it's like, yo, but there's no way you could have known that. You devil, everybody pay attention to devil girl. Like,
don't listen to her. She made
languages.
A deal with the devil.
Right.
Clara started to become very aggressive. And I guess, you know, making a deal with the devil also makes you strong as fuck. Because you just start, you know.
I know. So far, this is sounding
up.
pretty fucking sweet. Like,
yeah.
I hope there's a how-to section at the end.
Yeah. She was said to have these, like, beastly cries, and her voice frightened those around her. One attending nun described it as such. No animal had ever made such sounds, neither the lions of East Africa nor the angry bulls. At times it sounded like a veritable herd of wild beasts orchestrated by Satan had formed a hellish choir. Which is a pretty fucking cool description, and I hope that nun took the time to write more in her life.
I say it sounds like Legion, where you're possessed by like a whole bunch of. Well, yeah. I've always been a little confused on the legend of that, behind that. Like if it's a singular, plural demon, is kind of what I get there. But yeah, like I wish the nun had gone. I wish the nun had gone on to try to write down. Like, have you ever tried when you're writing something? I know we're both writers. Like when you try to like be like, and this character will let out a cry of, and you're like trying to like, how do you fucking convey that in text?
In a way that doesn't suck. Yeah.
Right. Like I hope the nun gave it a go.
You'll notice like, anytime I've written fiction, I try to keep dialogue completely out of it.
Yeah.
Because if there's one thing I've learned in, you know, almost 30 years on this earth, is that I don't understand how people talk. And then at some point in all this shit, Clara decided it was time to levitate, which is the only way you can cap off a good demonic possession. She supposedly went 5 feet in the air, and from all the descriptions, I guess she spun around like a wheel, because they always like to point out that she would levitate both vertically and horizontally. And so I always like the image of her just doing fucking cartwheels in the air.
Yeah.
150 people present at the mission over this time claimed to have seen Clara levitate. So what do you think, huh? They all lying? Yeah, probably.
But so, like, if they think that this girl's possessed and they're at a mission, but they're just, like, still letting her hang out, like, yeah, that's just old possessy over there. Like...
My horse possessy. The only way to get her down and out of that state of possession was to sprinkle holy water on her, and this would, like, burn her, which was all the confirmation you ever needed. And And like with any demonic possession, we have our fun, but eventually it becomes time to hit the possessed with sticks and shit and yell at her to get the devil out. Reverend Horner Erasmus was joined by a Reverend Man Sweaty, which I always read as Man Sweaty.
Yeah. And that's such a... Now, so he was a Southern Baptist preacher. You know that cliche, just sweating like buckets while he's...
it's probably pronounced like Mansuetti, but
it's Mansweaty.
But now it's Mansweaty. Yeah. And the two performed a 2-day exorcism. During this, Clara would keep trying to levitate and even tried to strangle one of the priests as they performed the ritual. Eventually, it was said that a noxious smell was observed leaving her body, and Clara was free of the evil that had taken her, which begs the question, how much of humanity's idea of evil is influenced by somebody having especially brutal farts?
Yeah, I was going to say, it just sounds like gas.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, if you got enough gas built up, you might be able to levitate. Like, I felt like I was going to shoot out of my chair a couple times. Like,
who among us has not launched off the toilet bowl? Unfortunately, Clara didn't exactly live happily ever after. She did live 6 more years without any demonic incidences, but died in 1912 due to heart failure at the age of 22. So, pretty shitty.
I think it was heartbreak because you had all these sweet powers, and then these meddling priests come along, and they're like, free yourself. And she's like, son of a bitch, I can't even fly anymore. Like, I have to walk everywhere like a freaking peon.
So, that's kind of the appetizer exorcism story for our main course here. But I did want to tell that one just because it was, one, it was funny, and two, there's some parallels to this one. This one is about Anna Ecklund. And Anna Ecklund is, a lot of her story is a lot of the motivations for, The Exorcist. But this is, I actually think this is a little more interesting. So she was born in 1882 in Wisconsin. Her family were German immigrants who were devoutly Catholic. Her early childhood was said to be pretty normal. She was quiet, but a cheerful girl. It was said as she got older, though, her father became abusive towards her. But there's no hard evidence for that, so who can say? It might just be trying to add tragedy to it. But also very believable to me that somebody's dad in the fucking 1900s was a piece of shit. When she turned 14, suddenly she began to hate all things religious. Before she had looked forward to going to church and the activities involved, but now she was, physically revolted by it. Almost like she was coming of an age where interests would change and behavior could be a little more erratic and rebellious because a lot of shit is going on.
No. Most teenagers, when they get older, they love rules and
conformity.
Yeah, and especially organizations that tell you that anything fun is bad.
Yeah. But she found herself feeling very ill and uncomfortable when she was in the building, especially when she looked at the imagery around her. Eventually, she couldn't even make it inside the church as if a barrier blocked her. If she did make it in, she would become panicked. She would vomit up communion wafers and fall into fits when the Bible or holy water or any imagery came near her. What troubled the people even more was when she would muse about wanting to vandalize the church or attack priests, but then claimed to have no recollection of saying such things, as if she were in a trance. She also would rant about unspeakable acts of violence and sex that, quote, she could not possibly have known about.
Yeah.
As well as an insatiable, unhealthy interest in sex, and it's just like, Jesus fucking Christ. It's not like 14-year-olds were invented in the 1800s. Like, how the fuck did anybody grow up back then for how little people understood about teenagers?
Well... And that's funny. It's like, there's no way she could have known about sex, even though we live in a single-bedroom household.
She also, showed epic mood swings and violent outbursts out of nowhere. She became morose and distant. She kept herself to her room mostly. Her parents were confused and unsettled by this because they're fucking idiots and they thought the devil was responsible. Medical and psychiatric professionals couldn't find anything wrong with her upon examinations, but at home, Anna's violent and antisocial tendencies increased and would continue for many more years. She would even start blurting out some Latin just to put the fucking fear into people, I guess. Because only demons can learn Latin, folks. That's
I'm going to start doing that, but I don't know Latin. Like Vini Vidi Vici, I'll just yell. That might just be Italian. I don't know. But
Buongiorno. That's what I was from hell.
When you're here, your family. Wait.
I like Buongiorno from hell.
Buongiorno from hell.
That's a good movie.
But see, that reminds. I was going to ask with the last one where they're like, she could speak all these different languages. It's like, could anybody else? Or was she just making noises? And you're like, that sounds Polish.
That sounds Polish like, and Norwegian.
Yeah, none of us speak Polish. It must be Polish.
Yeah.
Like,
Anna's mom eventually was sure that a demonic force had to be involved, and they enlisted the help of the church. They called upon a priest from Bavaria, Germany, named Father Theophilus Reisinger, who was said to be an expert on this demon shit.
Well, just like by his name alone, if you're looking through a directory of exorcism professionals and you came across, what was it, Theophilus, you'd be like, yep, that's the guy.
He's either a Roman emperor or he fights demons for a living.
Right.
The photo of him, it looks like he doesn't have a right hand either. So this is like all the makings of like an anime.
I say demon battling is a vicious business.
Yeah. He quickly came to the conclusion that Anna was indeed possessed and organized an exorcism that was carried out in June of 1912. Apparently it worked, and Anna was back to normal, so they were right. And me thinking a teenage brain in combination with probably a lot of deep-seated mental and emotional health issues beyond those physical changes were the cause of such behavior makes me just a fucking idiot.
Yeah, it was obviously demons.
Yeah. So let's move forward a few decades, and shit got bad for Anna again. At 46, she had called upon Theophilus once more out of sheer desperation. Whatever the fuck was tormenting her came back with a renewed intensity. Theophilus wasn't sure he could do it alone this time because he was an old fart. So he had Father F. Joseph Steiger to help him.
That's also a pretty good
Steiger.
exorcist name.
Yeah. Steiger reluctantly accepted the job, and as they were preparing a few more details for the exorcism, a few more details about Anna's family started to come out. The seemingly deep Catholic family was actually far from it. Anna's father and aunt were rumored to have been practicing witchcraft and even used Anna at an early age as a guinea pig for some of their fucked up rituals. Cursing her through spells and special herbs sprinkled in her foods, so drugging her, basically.
Yeah.
The rumor is that her father had some fucked up incestuous desires for Anna, and in his weird fucking crazy way, these curses were his way of punishing her for his own fucked up impulses. Whether any of that part is true or was added afterwards to bolster Anna's story isn't clear. I certainly have my doubts Anna's household was the most welcoming environment for a confused young girl, but I don't know if witchcraft is actually responsible.
Yeah, that's the thing, is you got to keep in mind that's a time period. And when I say that's a time period, that spans a very long time in our recent history, where if there's anything slightly out of the ordinary, people were like, witchcraft is definitely witchcraft.
Yeah. So either way, whatever was the culprit, Anna was taken to a convent early in Iowa for her next exorcism. The idea being that if you got her away from her home environment, maybe the demons would feel disoriented a bit. Get home court advantage, if you will.
Sure.
But getting her there was a pain in the ass. It took several nuns and 2 priests to get the flailing, snarling woman to the convent because she lost her shit as soon as she saw it. She would have to be dragged and bound to the bed where she growled and snapped at anybody who came near.
I was kind of hoping that she also levitated and they just tied a string to her like a balloon and like walked her in.
Hold your thought, because you'll notice patterns here. August 17th, 1928, the exorcism began. This is actually kind of funny, because this is the type of shit I would do. The priests weren't sure just how possessed Anna was, so they tried testing it. And by doing so, they would swap out holy water with tap water and see if she would react to both the same way. And they were pretty surprised when Anna only reacted to the holy water, despite not knowing
good for
which
them.
was which.
That's the scientific process right there.
Absolutely.
So they just earned some points. Yeah.
That's another funny thing about reading this. They always describe these things as symptoms of demonic possession, as if it's like a medical condition.
Yeah.
Ask your doctor if floating, levitating, vomiting, biting occurred.
I was about to say something. So, like, if your possession lasts longer than 4 hours, contact your exorcist immediately.
They did the same thing with blessed objects and food.
How do you have a fake blessed object? Be like,
well, I mean, like,
you hand her an apple and be like, oh, she knew it's not a cross.
Contrary to a bunch of vampire bullshit, you can't just nail 2 sticks together and call it a cross. You have to bless it. So, I assume that's what they did.
Okay.
If Latin was spoken in prayer, she would freak out, but if it was used conversationally, she was fine. If they unbound her from the bed, they find she would either immediately curl up in the corner and just like hiss at them and shit, or climb the wall like a fucking spider.
Why would you unbind her?
It's an exorcism. You got, you're going 12 rounds. All right. She even levitated up to the ceiling, and was apparently a big pain in the ass to get down, so that's when they decided, like, yeah, we got to keep her bound to this fucking bed. As the exorcism really got going, she fell into a comatose state at times and would let out, like, growls, wails, and bellow out sounds without her mouth moving. Her voice would change cadence, pitch, and timbre with almost the sound of 2 voices speaking at once. What's kind of eerie about this, if you do believe in it, is that they also describe this like a pack of wild beasts suddenly let loose. But who knows? Maybe it's the same nun.
Yeah, like I said, there's the the story of the passages in the Bible about Jesus curing a possessed guy, and that's what Legion comes from, and it was described the same way. It was, I forget, I'm far from a biblical scholar, but it was like a pack of animal when he was freed. So you could take that 2 ways, be like, see, in theory this all mashes up, but both of these stories tie back to people that already would have had knowledge of that story from the Bible,
right?
So it wouldn't be like unusual to retrofit your, that's so. Yeah. But it is a very eerie and kind of interesting idea.
Yeah, you have that's why we even told the first story, is just the parallels I think are kind of interesting. But this is absolutely the more fleshed out one. She reportedly vomited rancid liquid and tobacco leaves, would just like piss and spit a bunch, and claw or bite at people who approached her. Physically, she also started to change. Her eyes began to bulge from her face, her head and lips swelled, and her abdomen looked as if it was going to explode, only to revert back to normal size. Which all actually kind of sounds like a violent reaction to some horrific infection, but I'm sure, call it a demon. As this fucked up event went on, they came to the conclusion Anna had 4 demons in her, and some lesser spirits. One introduced itself as Beelzebub, who seemed to delight in challenging priests to complex philosophical debates and mind games. Kind of that's the demon you tend to think of when you think of, like, the exorcism movies is, the one who wants to, like, so for some reason just wants to argue with priests, and they didn't have the internet at the time, so they couldn't do it online. Another was the one and only Judas Iscariot, who was trying to convince Anna to kill herself. And the other two were said to be Anna's father and aunt, who were determined to torment her beyond the grave. The spirits would taunt anyone present and seemingly summoned a swarm of flies and mosquitoes that would cloud the air out of nowhere, only for them to vanish in a flash. Awful stenches would arise, and Theophilus claimed he had a powerful vision at one point of the whole room being aflame, with Beelzebub standing in the corner berating him.
I like that it's berating him, like...
You dumb fucker.
You wore that shirt with those pants?
Oh, yeah, your collar. It's really doing a lot to stop this fire, you dumb dipshit. It was all too much for a conventional exorcism, and the priest had to take the job in shifts. Despite his age, Theophilus spent the most time in the room because he was the most determined to save Anna. It seemed like they were getting nowhere, but after 23 days, the demons gradually weakened their control until suddenly Anna bolted up and yelled, "Beelzebub, Judas, Jacob, Mina, hell, hell, hell! My Jesus, mercy, praise be Jesus Christ!" And they were gone. Anna was pretty...
So, all of these exorcists couldn't do shit, and then she, it sounds like, expelled them herself. She was like, I found the Konami code for demon ejection.
Up, down, like... down, hell, hell, hell. But yeah, she was free. Anna was pretty haunted by what had happened, but the rest of her days were supposedly fairly normal. Many of the nuns were so fucking shooken up by what happened, they asked to be transferred from the convent. Which I think is weird, because it's not like,
It's not like the convent's tied to the events, it was the women.
But maybe, I don't know. If you believe in exorcists, maybe you believe the demons hang around.
Yeah, that's true.
Theophilus would get some decent level of fame out of the deal, becoming America's top expert on exorcisms and even being talked about in Time magazine in 1936.
He stumbled ass backwards into this exorcism, and now he's a
Because expert, for 23 straight days, that old dude with the fucking Roman Emperor name went in there with one hand, Steve, and he fought Beelzebub. Steger would mostly avoid the spotlight, but did an interview about the event with a priest named Father Karl Vogel, who was writing about the events in a booklet called Begone Satan, a soul-stirring account of diabolical possession in Iowa. The reception this booklet got, a lot of people thought Vogel greatly embellished the account, but Steger's housekeeper would always claim that Steger believed Vogel didn't even scrape the surface of how fucked up the incident was. The end.
It's interesting because I was thinking while you were talking about it, we've heard all these stories about people that were supposedly possessed, and they got, they eventually an exorcist came in and either saved them or didn't. Although I don't know if I've ever read one where the possessed person dies or doesn't make it. Which is my question. If demon possession is real, what are the chances that every single person that gets possessed by a demon also manages to find somebody that can exorcise the demon? Why aren't there just people walking around levitating in the grocery store?
I'm not saying I would make that deal, but I would have to think about it. I'd have to run the papers by my agent. If you told me, hey, you can float, and you'll be really strong.
Yeah, strong, you can float, you're psychic, you speak a bunch of languages that may or may not exist.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I wish, this is one of those things, like, I guess it's fucked up to say that I wish people's everlasting souls were in jeopardy, but I do wish, like, demonic possessions were a real thing. Like,
yeah, because wouldn't being an exorcist, that would be I'd quit my current job and take a job as an exorcist. That seems like such a interesting job.
I feel like I could make more headway arguing with Beelzebub than I could arguing with some of the people I argue with at work every day.
Well, I mean, anybody that's spent any time on Twitter, like you're pretty good at handling trolls.
Mm-hmm. I mean, like, I feel like I would tire them out, because, like, they just want to, they just want to bicker and shit and troll you, and it's like, oh, you want to have a fucking debate? You want to argue for, like, 23 straight days? Let's do it. Like, I have nothing to do.
I'd fuck with them, like, a different way. They'd be like, oh, I'm possessed, and I'm going to make you question your... And I'd be like... I'd just look at them and be like, no, you're not.
Do you realize, like, what kind of, like, pathetic, lonely man you're talking to? I'm going to fucking absolutely argue with you until the end of time.
Didn't you see me just levitate? No, you didn't levitate. Like, you just, like, you get to the point where the demon's so, like, annoyed with you that it just goes back to how, like, fuck, this guy's a dick. Like,
yeah. How do I know you don't have a giant fan under the bed blowing you up like a fucking Sonic the Hedgehog level?
Penn and Teller could figure it out.
Yeah. Just because I can't figure it out doesn't mean you're flying, dude. All right?
I saw David Blaine do the same thing. Is he possessed?
Yeah. I saw the Shaq balloon. You're not fucking fooling me. Yeah.
No, it is an interesting... and it's one of those things, too, where... You know, there's always those questions, like, if you could go back in time and, like, witness any one event... Like, this wouldn't be my top event, but how interesting would it be to go back and see what actually, like, happened? Yeah. Because my thoughts are much sadder and much less paranormal, and that a lot of this stuff was, like, your typical mental, health issues. Mm-hmm. And it was easier. They didn't diagnose it as such. We know for a fact, we've covered other stories where this kind of stuff comes up, where they have something that would be diagnosed as an actual, disorder today. And back then they'd just be like, possession, lock them up. And then, the stuff gets embellished. Like, I have a hard time believing somebody levitated to the ceiling. Like, but to set your mind at ease, I'd go back and, like, sit there for 23 days just to watch the events and be like, did this really happen?
Yeah, I mean, I'd be curious to see, like, what the details were. Some of it's, like, mental health, but, like, the way they describe a lot of, like, the physical stuff with Anna's story, like, I'm sure there's mental issues there, but it also genuinely sounds like a physical ailment. Like,
I was thinking, like, seizures, and because there's all sorts of different kind of seizure conditions. We picture grand mal, although that can make it, like... Some people, you jerk and move so well. You say amazing strength, and I know I've been witness to people having grand mal seizures, and that's exactly how that goes down. Like, but there's the speaking in tongues. I worked at a place that had a guy that had seizures, but not like the typical Hollywood, grand mal where you're shaking and stuff. It was just like your brain. It was like he turned into a different person. Yeah. For a while. So, like, a lot of that stuff kind of fits. And that's just one example. I mean, there's a lot of different ailments and conditions that, like, could fit. And especially if you had a combination of them. Mm-hmm. The only thing that makes these, like, especially her story, like I'm familiar with her. I couldn't have recited any of that from start to finish because I didn't know it that well. But I think we've all seen, like, TV things where they talk about, and the exorcism was based on this real exorcist, whatever. The thing that does make it interesting to me is you hear these stories and it's always like, they were normal, regular everyday life. And then this happened. And then at the end of 23 days, she went back to being fine for the rest of her life. And there are physical conditions that can just like you can have a flare up or whatever. I don't know the proper terminology, but it does seem pretty unlikely that like it would just be cured after being locked in a room for 23 days and being yelled at by a priest.
Yeah. Well, I think like you know, the thing I was going to say is like they're talking about her stomach looking like it's going to erupt, and that reminds me of like a really. Probably the most severe, like, medical thing my mom ever had to go through was, like, she had this huge infection in her stomach, and it was so fucking painful, and, like, the way people act when they're in intense pain is, like, you know, it is on that level of, like, erratic, fucking angry, aggressive, panicky, like, you know.
Well, and then... there's a lot of suggestion in it, too. If you plant that idea that it's not a medical condition, you're possessed, then...
you would... If a doctor was like, I don't know what's wrong with you, my mom probably would have been like, it's the fucking demon then.
Yeah.
You know?
And that fits, too. They said, you know, vomiting up noxious fluids while infected. I don't know if people out there, if people listening have ever dealt with any kind of infections, but, that stuff is... Mm-hmm. It can be nasty.
Yeah.
So that fits. But
yeah, who's to say?
But it was probably just Satan.
It was probably just Satan. Beelzebub. My bub, Beelzebub.
My bubby.
My bubby.
My bubby.
Beelzebuddy. The new toy for children.
From Mattel.
I like Beelzebuddy. We really need to like make merch for this show.
I know.
I want a Beelzebuddy hat.
I kind of want Beelzebuddy overalls. I think my buddy had overalls, if I remember right.
I need, yeah. That's a good idea.
Tune in next week when we give you the link to our new merch store.
Oh, yeah. Everybody else has one. Fuck it.
I know. There was something a couple episodes ago that I really wanted. I even mocked it up. I wasn't gonna like do it obviously, but I was like, I gotta see what this would look like on a T-shirt, and it would have been fucking awesome. But I forget what the line was now. We have a lot of them.
Yeah, we're quotable people.
Mm-hmm.
Use us for your next report.
That's why I can walk down the street without being recognized. But if I start talking, people are like, "You're that guy from that podcast." No, that's not actually ever happens.
My impulse would be to run away if people recognize me from the podcast.
Yeah, deny and flee. That's
I don't have an internet. Yeah. Then run away. Anywho, that's the show this week. Hope you had a good time. We sure did. We'll miss you. Bye.
I hope something possesses you to come back next week.
Bye-bye.